Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of the Media here, and it's been about a week now since Charlie Kirk was murdered, and a lot of things have come out that just don't add up. But one of the number one things that we have seen coming out of this is the overall manufactured agenda, which we've been warning about for some time now. Of course, his death was tragic. Of course, like as I've mentioned before, I knew him personally. I've known him going back to 2017. We disagreed on a lot. That is besides the point. I don't think he faked his death. That does not make any sense to me. And, I'm still looking at it as a man who had a 1.5-year-old and a 3-year-old child. Why would he go live in obscurity in a basement with facial reconstruction surgery for the rest of his life to push forward this agenda at the top of his fame? It makes no sense. What I do think is that the state kills both friends and enemies if it helps them with their narrative. And we see so many flaws in the story around this Tyler Robinson guy. We've gone into it in our previous videos, which I hope people have checked out over on Rumble and BitChute at World Alternative Media. But there's a lot more to the story that, of course, this leads to. The overall agenda, as I've said, and my goodness, have we ever seen a lot happening in the week that followed his death. Of course, we've seen the push for overall technocracy from the right in ways that, we saw being pushed by the left for so long with cancel culture. And people will say, well, this is different. Someone has been killed. Of course, that is what they would do to get people to fall in line with this overall narrative that they have pushed forward. As this idea of this lone shooter comes out, they push forward this searchable database of 20,000 individuals celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder, and they'll soon be available on their online. It will be searchable by general location, employer, industry type. Political violence can never be the answer. Yes, political violence should never be the answer, nor should a database doxing everyone. And, this is happening as U.S. lawmakers push for a bill to strip passports over Israel criticism. Absolutely insane if you want to know who owns you, as well as this push to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. I can't stand Antifa. They come after me. They've poured stuff in my gas tank, destroy my car. They've threatened to kill me. I'm not someone that's going to stand here and say that, Antifa shouldn't be considered a terrorist organization. But in the law, the way this works is that they can now bring in surveillance, and they could actually call people who just criticize Trump a terrorist, just like Obama did with the National Defense Authorization Act, just like Trudeau and Harper in Canada did with Bill C-51. This is not new, but this is the next step in a line of pushes towards total technocracy, which we're going to go into today. Where this goes, CEOs of Discord, Steam, Twitch, Reddit summoned to DC over online radicalization. Before it was radical right wingers, now it's radical left wingers that they're going after. My goodness. And the cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel is a big one, as well as Rosie O'Donnell melts down over Kimmel cancellation. Fuck this. America is no more, she says. The back and forth over this and the censorship. We are entering a very dark stage in human history. We are going to go into so much more today worldwide, and how this Charlie Kirk assassination affects this going forward. Before we do, I urge people to check those links below and help support us if you can. I mean, we have never needed the help more, my friends. We are censored. We're not mainstream alternative media. We're not mainstream media. We are silenced regularly, but we will never shut up, and we will never stop telling the truth, even if it basically is us shooting ourselves in the foot by daring to step out of line. We will not stand in line. We will be, of course, continuously shadow banned and silenced because of this, but you guys can help support us. And we have gogetfunding.com, Patreon, and Subscribestar. If you pledge $4.99 a month on Patreon or Subscribestar or more, you'll get exclusive content. Same with on X at World Alt Media. We have a Bitcoin address that you can scan on the screen here or donate to in the description of this video, and help us by subscribing to us on Rumble and BitChute as well. I want to point out, obviously, that we didn't post a ton of videos this last week, but I'm in Canada trying to deal with banks shutting me down. So I mean, again, you guys, anything you can do to help, we truly appreciate it. We've never needed it more. Save us from bankruptcy if you can, my friends. Anyway, we're going to go into the story. Again, as I mentioned, the world is blowing up over this Charlie Kirk thing, and it's an absolute tragedy because, again, as I said from day one, within the hour of his death, I said, we are dealing with a push for a culture war, a civil war, and none of it is real. It's all manufactured. They will create an establishment and an anti-establishment, and they'll create limited hangouts, and they'll play us against each other, and they'll put us in a situation where we will see perpetual warfare on the ground. in ways that we have not seen before. And they need emergency orders. They need the right excuse, as always, the pretext. As they say, they fall for the same stuff that they fell for with Lee Harvey Oswald. They got him NPCs in 1963. They got him NPCs in 2025. We're seeing already these massive moves made as the Charlie Kirk Data Foundation says a searchable database of over 20,000 individuals celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder will soon be available on our website. It'll be searchable by general location, employer, and industry type. Political violence can never be the answer, to which I said on X at World Alt Media. Again, go follow us there. Mainstream alternative media cheering on a database for thought crimes. As someone who is traumatized by what happened to Charlie Kirk, be very suspicious of those who think this is a good idea. Again, we have alternative medias, including many people I'm sure you've seen it, cheering this on. These people that are cheering on his death are absolutely sick. The people cheering on this database are absolutely sick and falling for these same old traps. And I'm so damn sick of it. Technocracy is king in the Trump administration, just like it was pushed through the climate lobby on the left and the World Economic Forum as Trump meets with the king. Of course, King Charles, a puppet, a Rothschild puppet, sick child trafficker, alleged, who, of course, helped introduce the Great Reset with Klaus Schwab. A big part of that is censorship, and the censorship leads to AI. AI is one of the number one things that Trump has been putting money into. And of course, they are bringing in these massive databases. Palantir is doing so. They're creating a hive mind with satellites. And of course, they are pushing for digital IDs, CBDCs, and all these things. And the Genius Act, the list goes on. And you will have to wonder who is a big part of this conspiracy. Well, who almost always is? Israel. U.S. lawmakers push bill to strip passports over Israel criticism. If you want to know who owns you, I said, ask who you cannot criticize. You cannot call yourself a free speech absolutist when you throw people in jail for burning a flag, a piece of cloth, or deport people for criticizing a foreign country. Tell me you're blackmailed by Israel without telling me you're blackmailed by Israel. This Charlie Kirk thing is a big part of this too. He was really dangerous because in his final days, yes, indeed, he was coming out against Israel in a big way. And the amount of people I have evidence of, talking with him in the weeks before he died, him saying that he was afraid Israel was going to kill him. I don't believe in coincidences. I'm not saying Israel killed him. I believe that it's a big part of a psyop that could involve the U.S. intelligence agencies and Israel. I have to disagree with Nick Fuentes on this. I think that there is a good chance Israel was involved. I don't know why he's covering for them so much suddenly now that Charlie Kirk died. But I believe that this is all part of the emergency order situation, which I said at the beginning of the year, in January of this year. I said one of my predictions for this year was they're going to start killing off political activists and blame it on the other side to cause a culture war, to bring in emergency orders. And I believe that they could do the same thing to people like AOC and Greta Thunberg. And I'll think it's despicable in that situation as well, no matter how much I can't stand them. But again, this is part of the agenda. President Trump announces plan to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. Antifa is a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster. Now, again, I agree. They are awful. I can't stand them. It's hard for me. It hurts to in any way defend them. But there are a lot of teenagers that are just basement dwelling losers who have fallen for the school indoctrination camps, the government indoctrination camps, we call schools, I should say, when it pushes them into this ideology. And of course, it's wrong. It's the same thing as they push people into the trans ideology. They are victims in itself. Of course, putting them on a terrorist list allows them to do airstrikes legally. Airstrikes, my friends. They just did this with the Mexican cartels recently after they armed and funded them for decades. We have to understand how dangerous this can be. Because again, Antifa, absolute disgusting. I don't even know if you can call it an organization because it's just a bunch of communists, anarcho-communists, though that's an oxymoron because communism involves collectivism and enforcement, and anarchy means the obviously the dissolution of centralized powers. But nonetheless, that's what they claim they are. And of course, this would lead to obviously a major disruption when it comes to surveillance. And I believe they're bringing in massive surveillance tech. And Trump is talking about putting people in jail for criticizing him, or people like Charlie Kirk, which is against everything that Charlie Kirk stood for. By the way, he was very much against restriction of free speech. That was the whole purpose of him debating on college campuses. So it makes me sick. It should make you sick too. And those falling for it, give your head a shake. CEOs of Discord, Steam, Twitch, Reddit summoned to DC over online radicalization. And I quote, I'm calling on the CEOs of Discord, Steam, Twitch, and Reddit to testify at an oversight committee hearing on October 8th. Now, again, we are seeing this in they're talking about civil terrorism in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination. This is exactly like the Marxist revolutionaries are horrible, but this is exactly what we're seeing as that normalization and that push, the problem reaction solution kind of approach, a Hegelian dialectic to push us into a situation where we have a full-fledged surveillance state. And on the spying, remember when we called out Obama for the NSA spying? I mean, now it's when they're canceling us, which they were, and it's horrible. And now they're just turning it over onto the other side, which is something I want to bring up next, because in the wake of this whole Charlie Kirk thing, Jimmy Kimmel said some awful things on his show. He said that Charlie Kirk was killed by MAGA, which obviously wasn't true. But of course, the idea that it was a leftist is also not true. It's intelligence agencies. This is part of that back and forth. And that is going to create that new narrative. And of course, as I wrote on X at World Alt Media last night, I wrote, I don't care about Jimmy Kimmel, nor do I have a comment on his show being canceled. And while I understand why many people see it as a turn against the old style mainstream model, which is cancerous, I'm more concerned about the perpetual shift between the left and right within the paradigm, as this pendulum never brings anyone freedom or humanity. It only brings people a circle of inhumanity, despair, and slavery. The same administration that talks big talk about free speech and against cancel culture and claims to be anti-establishment also wants to cancel people and in some cases jail and deport people for their views. They also cover for pedophiles, as we see with the Epstein thing, which was, of course, a Mossad operation, blackmail operation. I said they need to create an establishment and a fake anti-establishment to ensure everyone stays within the fake narrative, all in line, off the cliff and into the reset. Because this is what it is, technocracy, the push for the reset, the digital IDs, CBDCs, food rations in your little, Bill Gates 15-minute city camps. I mean, my goodness, how do people not see this? Yet we have this bounce between the left and the right, as always, within the paradigm that never ends within the mainstream and mainstream alternative media, and everyone gets emotional. And I understand getting emotional about the death of someone, a young father in front of you on camera. We're not supposed to see those gory images on a regular basis, and we have recently, but it's the fact that they're using that emotion to direct us in the wrong direction, of course, as always, limited hangout, as the CIA calls it, and call it a leftist issue or a right-wing issue. And I've talked to people left and right, and people saying that it was a good thing that he was killed, and other people that are saying we need to start locking up people on the left. And it's like, both of you are wrong. Like, it's, again, I knew the guy. He would not support this. He had a lot of problems that I disagreed with. I couldn't stand his views on Israel for years, and his constant, unwavering support for Trump pissed me off, and I let him know, and we argued about it. But I will say he's a human being who was always very nice to me, and of course was shifting a lot in the final days, which makes him a dangerous person to them, but also expendable because he's still so popular among so many as kind of a moderate centrist conservative, allows him to be used as the tool to bring in technocracy, to piss people off, to rile people up, to clash people against each other. Imagine if they went after him the way they have, what they would do to most of you watching, and what they would do to myself, and seeing people in my family cheer this on. Basically tells me, well, they wouldn't mind me getting rounded up and killed or assassinated. And again, that should wake a lot of people up. But again, that is also what they want. They want to clash people against each other, and they want to create this groupthink mentality in the social construct, in which we saw during the COVID stuff as well. So again, this is all part of that same puzzle. They're all pieces of the same puzzle that lead us to that technocratic surveillance state and takeover. And I want people to be very, very wary about what they are conditioned by, what they're normalized to, and how they're directed in these directions towards further control and technocracy, out of emotion, out of fear, out of this feeling of emergency and necessity. This is, of course, a big psyop. And this is a part of that censorship campaign, which people on the right are rightly against in places like the UK, and were against in the United States, but now seem to be moving away. UK comedy writer Graham Linehan arrested over tweets critical of gender ideology, hospitalized after stress. Horrible stuff. Insane. Germany, economist Thomas Verhaus fined 16,100 euros for sarcastic X posts. Again, this continued crackdown on free speech. And again, we know that there are many examples of Germany claiming that they don't censor people. We have freedom of speech in Europe. Everyone says what he wants, even if he's a billionaire. What we do not accept is if this is supporting extreme right positions. Here you have Olaf Scholz saying this. But in this case, it's about right positions. And in the United States, just months ago, it was, we have to stop the right wingers are radical. And now they're doing this about the left. And again, paradigm, left-right paradigm, Pepsi versus Coke, one's red, one's blue, or they're both bad for you. They're probably owned by the same company. They all come from Monsanto, and they're all there to poison you and keep you in line and make you argue over which one's better. And obviously the answer is Coca-Cola, but the point is they both kill you. You see what I mean? Like, oh, well, obviously the right is better on these subjects. They want smaller government. Great, until they say that under the guise of censoring you. Now you have them censoring the right, claiming it's free speech. Orwellian doublethink in places like Germany. And then you have them going after people on the left in the United States under the guise of stopping radicalism and everything. I mean, do people not see the slippery slope? Because to me, it's quite clear. Ron Paul warns government ownership of corporations signals rising fascism in America. So this is something I've been wanting to talk about for a little while. I'm going to do a bigger video on it later. But I wanted to mention it in this video today because the next form of censorship is your mind and your body and your free will completely, entirely, the basis of your humanity itself, your individualism. And I believe that these moves to buy up all these major corporations at the hands of the state, this is the epitome of fascism. And by the way, Antifa isn't really anti-fascist. They love fascism, but of course, they're more communistic at the same time. You have technocratic Marxism, technocratic fascism. They are all actually basically the same thing in one big circle. They all lead to government control of corporations where government is a corporation. They are the monopoly under the guise of keeping you safe and secure and all these blah, blah, blah talking points, demagoguery. And you have big tech could soon use brain chips to read your innermost thoughts, says a study, while they're getting bought up by big corporations like we're seeing with Intel, the United States government buying up Intel. Again, a major move towards technocracy, as Howard Lutnick suggests looking at defense sector after Intel deal. Here we go. First of all, Jeffrey Epstein's former next door neighbor, who hosted Clinton fundraisers in 2016 at his house next door to Epstein, and then became the head of Trump's transition team, and then became part of the administration and is behind Trump every time Trump says Epstein didn't do anything wrong, basically, and that anyone that questions him is a weakling, is now a big part of bringing in all this. I mean, tell me this isn't blackmail, my friends. Tell me this isn't blackmail. It so obviously is. Trump pushing to expand government stake in private industry, as we have seen. TSA eyes private sector to launch touchless biometric screening at airports. And again, they're doing this in Mexico too, by the way, with biometrics. But I want to also point out, this is something I've talked about for quite a long time. The idea of them actually using the collapse of the dollar, which is obviously going to happen. All fiat currencies eventually revert to zero. Always will. Going back to 1024 AD in China, that is going to happen. They have their CBDC ready. They're rolling it out right now in Europe, the European CBDC, central bank digital currency. They're doing it in the UK. We've done videos on how 193 countries are rolling out CBDCs. And of course, the US is no stranger to that with the Genius Act. They say the Fed won't control it. I believe the Treasury will. And I believe they will go through private sectors to do this. And this move into the private sectors is a major part of this. So again, you might wonder, what does this have to do with Charlie Kirk? The emergency situations that bring in the technocracy and the databases that will lead to the censorship, which will stop you from being able to purchase things you want and lead to the social credit system under your monetary dependency to this digital currency. This is what is going to happen. I 100% believe it. They're shifting completely into the technocratic approach that they talked about for a very long time of private industry owning up everything. They don't have to follow any constitution, not that the US government does anyway. But they are basically a part of a shadow state. We saw that with Sam Altman, with Trump's move with AI, $500 billion Stargate. Larry Ellison, who just surpassed Elon Musk as the richest guy in the world, by the way. And Elon Musk is one of the biggest promoters of technocracy, calling for UBI to replace all jobs while he replaces jobs with AI. So again, a major move as he brings in his ex system to be its own bank, registering it as a bank while also utilizing it to gather social credit information from the algorithm, which is already affecting people's ability to be seen. And of course, simultaneously working with Visa, MasterCard, and all these other companies to bring in X money the week that he left the Trump administration and they pretended to fight. And of course, bringing in robots to your house. So convenient, it's cheap. Of course it is. It's a surveillance device to make you dependent and to control your every move. So again, and his grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, was, of course, the head of the Technate party in Canada, which got him kicked out of Canada for his push for a Marxist technocracy, a world government, which Elon Musk says he's just continuing off where his grandfather left off. UK's tax authority to surveil social media posts. There you go on that. A major shift between, okay, that is surveillance tech on social media with social credit attached to your bank. The United Nations Pact for the Future, which 193 countries signed on to 1 year ago, September 2024, also says they could shut down your account, your social media, your bank accounts for saying negative things about the state and force you into a food ration system. Age verification lobby pushes for age verification checks for VPN use. Again, another part of what they're also doing on the right with things like the age verification on online to stop children from watching porn, which obviously I don't support children watching porn, but that's a parent's job to parent their kids. This is a slippery slope, a Trojan horse to bring in digital IDs for everyone online and surveil everyone's every move through the Starlink system they're creating, which will be the only option when they sever the underwater cables and under the guise of war in the currently happening World War III situation that is kind of cold right now. People don't realize how hot it will actually get. And it's all by design and it's all manufactured. The Defender reports regulators must tell public that digital IDs will be voluntary and optional, Children's Health Defense says. Okay, it won't happen. They'll say it's voluntary for a while until you literally can't go anywhere without using it. It's like Visa card and MasterCard, credit cards. Oh, it's voluntary, except for we're just going to make countless businesses not accept cash anymore. So yeah, there we go. And demonetize the cash in circulation on top of that, while printing us into inflation. The expose says the master architect behind the technocratic takeover of the Trump administration is Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, of course, is one of the founders of Palantir alongside Alex Karp, who laughs about using AI drones to indiscriminately kill children in Palestine. Patrick Wood has been calling out Peter Thiel for a very long time. He's a friend of our show. And Peter Thiel, of course, is obsessed with the Antichrist and is pushing forward all this tech, calling himself a libertarian while pushing for us to literally give up our very humanity and be depopulated. But he's one of the major funders of Trump and J.D. Vance and a major player in sprucing up J.D. Vance. And obviously, of course, targeting people like Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, and others. Candace Owens, of course, broke out of that. Twitter admits they deleted my tweets because Israel asked them to, then lies for the rationale. And Grok, the Twitter AI bot, said it was likely the very department of the child predator that we exposed that made the request, says Sean King, which I believe that would probably relate to this Vegas guy who was an Israeli official in the defense sector who was caught trying to rape a bunch of kids and then sent back without charges to Israel, where he lives extradition free because Israel keeps pedophiles under lock and key so that they can't be actually brought to trial. But yes, Israel is definitely censoring what people say online. Netanyahu calls for censorship. Israel is accused of starving children pretty much the way that in the Middle Ages, Jews were accused of killing Christian children for their blood. Well, no, I'm not going to go there. Not today. And it says, we have to do something about the algorithms at the social networks, he says. He's calling for censorship under the guise of, at the same time, saying we should be able to say anything we want. I'm a free speech absolutist. Absolute coward and fraud and a piece of shit, and I can't deal with it. And he's a guy who, within 13 seconds of Trump announcing Charlie Kirk's death, is online announcing Charlie Kirk's death. How does he know so fast? It is sick. It's sick. And now Ben Shapiro is trying to take over Turning Point USA, and the guy who says we love our men and women, the men and women of the CIA, and love the Iraq war and support genocide in Israel, and says that he supports Israel over the United States government. So again, I'm getting a little bright here, so don't mind me, I'm gonna turn down my lighting a bit here. What we're dealing with is one of the biggest psyops we've seen thus far, and it will continue in this direction as, of course, people fall for the emotion of this. And I believe that they will assassinate more figures, both on the left and the right, to get people riled up. It's, as I've said from the beginning, Civil War, World War, all these things are under the guise of an emergency that brings in emergency orders and brings in technocracy and censorship, and eventually the complete censorship of your very being, forcing you into food rations and onto digital IDs and CBDCs, and of course, social credit scores in 15-minute cities. And this is blatantly clear, and it comes from the left and it comes from the right, and it comes from within the paradigm that goes in a circle forever and eternity. And we end up going in circles forever because we don't step out of line. We don't withdraw from the dependency system that they're putting us under, both emotionally, mentally, physically, and of course, when it comes to just basic survival skills. It's pathetic what they've turned us into, because they depend on the dependence of the masses to thrive. So this Charlie Kirk thing, I believe 100%, as I said, the moment it happened, they're trying to start civil war. Whether, I don't think the civil war is real. I think it's manufactured. I think it's fake. They will create bombings. They'll do campaigns and then blame one side or the other, and then create hell on earth, which will bring in emergency orders on both sides. It doesn't matter who's in, because at the end of the day, again, presidents don't really have power. And of course, we know that they want perpetual chaos to bring in the technocracy, to show us that humanity is not to be trusted, so we must depend on machine, and it will make the decisions for us, and it'll bring us safety and national security and all these bullshit claims in the new world order. Tower of Babel. So what happens next? Okay, well, I've already gone into all the ways that this is going to bring in technocracy, but what happens next for you? What are you going to do about it? And I mean, this is really, as it always is, an intervention, because I think that if people watching have no way to actually defend themselves from this yet, they are within the system, whether it be the banks, which I am stuck in many ways. That's why I'm in Canada right now, dealing with insane amounts of problems with banks as they keep shutting me down. Whether you're dependent on the grocery stores, whether you're dependent on the grid, whether you're dependent on water, the housing market, are you renting or do you own? All these different things. The best way to starve out the system is not by voting for a new guy, like after the last 3,000 or 4,000 years people have. It's to step out of the system and starve out the system, cut off the head, and the body will die, as they say. Of course, I'm being metaphorical for those that want to arrest me for saying that. Peaceful dissolution of the state and this entity that is trying to control us comes from you as an individual, basing your strategy on the basis of humanity itself, which is, again, you don't be dependent on the grocery stores. You have something stocked up, so when they shut off the food, you aren't dependent on eating their slime or whatever Soylent Green they give you, dependent on your social credit score on your digital ID, or cut off your power, or say you have to share everything like in a communist country. That is 100% the direction they're going in, and people don't like it. But I will, as per usual, give people some options. And they don't know. I mean, I get attacked all the time. I make like nothing off of this. I just want people to take this seriously and actually have some resources. So the descriptions of my videos are full of solutions. I urge people to look at things like heavensharvest.com for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO. There's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you'll get 5% off, as well as free shipping on your order. I highly recommend people get on this today. If you aren't at least somewhat prepared with storable foods, then you are in a world of hurt going forward. And I wish I could help you more, but it comes down to you as an individual stepping out and doing this. So if you have 2 boxes already, get another 3. Stock up on this, my friends. Of course, another thing is we're under attack, obviously through Wi-Fi and radio waves and all this other stuff. We could go into it all day. This is a part of Technocracy, but I urge people to also check out our link for Wave Watch 2.0 below. Save $100 when you use code WAM, W-A-M. 1,100 plus frequencies. It's like having a rife machine on your wrist. I highly recommend people check it out. It's super cool. And of course, when it comes to health, very important, we have vni.life/wam, W-A-M, for super supplements. And that includes, by the way, Protovite. Now, I urge people to use code WAM15, WAM15, and you'll get 15% off on this. You could also subscribe and get further money off of this stuff. But this is 100 plus vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients, helps the immune system, helps cellular health. Look at the before and after on this. I've shown some of you guys before. Look at the pollution and the lack of circulation in the blood. And then 5 minutes later, restored red blood cell, circulation, negative charge. White blood cells are 4 times the size. Free flowing. This is amazing. The circulation, this usually takes a month to do. Here, it takes about 5 minutes according to these studies. So go and check that out, vni.life/WAM, WAM, code WAM15. And of course, help the farmers as well as saving yourself. I urge people to go and check out Wild Pastures, linked in the description. If you use our link, you'll get 20% off for life plus $15 off your first box of 100% grass-fed and finished beef, pasture-raised pork, pasture-raised chicken, and wild-caught seafood. No mRNA, no GMOs, hormones, antibiotics, steroids, feedlots, pesticides, or chemicals of any kind, all raised on family farms in 48 U.S. states. That's regenerative family farms. Shipped to your door, temperature controlled and customizable as you see fit. Again, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, no pun intended. You're helping those local farmers. You're helping yourself with as far as your health goes, and you're saving money at the same time. So go and check it out. We also, of course, have ways to, we have firstnational.com/schedule-consult/, which of course lets you work with Mark Gonzalez to buy physical gold and silver, put it in your hands, put it in a vault, put it in an IRA outside of a traditional IRA system. That's a way to not be dependent on those CBDCs going forward. You get a free consultation with Mark Gonzalez and a free investment package. Of course, you have to use that exact link that we use in the description and let him know that you found him at WAM or World Alternative Media. And, as we close this off, those that speak the loudest are silenced the most. And I urge people to help support us if you can. And we couldn't survive without you. And thank you to those who supported us recently. We need your continued support. I'm stuck in Canada right now. I'm stuck at hotels. I'm, as per usual, being bankrupted. I'm being hit by the system hard. If you've seen my posts on Twitter or Facebook, you know what I've been talking about. Being totally screwed due to a technical error at a bank that's led to a issue with debt collectors and them coming after me and them wanting to press charges on me for something that I was actually paying for. And it was technical error at the bank, but they're not letting me fix it. It's a horrible thing. Anyway, it's cost me thousands of dollars to be here, and it's drained me once again, my friends. But if you help support us, it keeps us alive and allows us to get back to our regular scheduled programming, as one would say, and of course, keep the truth alive. So we appreciate all those who've helped us. Go get funding.com, Patreon, Subscribestar, $4.99 a month or more in pledges on Patreon or Subscribestar or exit at World Alt Media. We'll get you exclusive content, including, of course, early access to videos, and we'll answer your messages with video messages if you want. Of course, all customizable stuff. And of course, we have a PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com. We have a Bitcoin address that you can scan on the screen right here or check out in the description of the video in text form. And of course, we have a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you can donate in, if you please, including privacy coins. So again, we have options. We have our Teespring link with a bunch of merchandise that you can help support us with by purchasing, of course, as well. And of course, you can find us on Telegram, Band.video, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson. And on the bad guys, TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter and Getter at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms except for Spotify, where, of course, we're banned. Hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. And as always, my friends, live freely, live by example. Don't fall into these traps, these psyops, these moves to make you dependent and of course, enslaved by the system. Break free, break outside of it. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.